Hello, welcome to Star Wars Spelt Out. This is your host, Josh Chapman speaking, and we're in the studio with a studio guest. It's a nice, balmy, warm evening in Melbourne here. Summer has sprung, and when it's hot and we have the hot news, we have the scoops, we bring in our almost effective news correspondent who comes in for all the hot news. It's Cathrine Kneen. Hey, Cathrine.
Hey, Josh. How are you going?
Good. You're almost like the pseudo other host of this podcast. Anytime any news drops or anything, you're basically the go-to.
Yeah, I get in my car, drive up here.
I know.
Talk,
I did say, well, we could do it over Skype. You're like, I'll get in the car. I'll cruise over. It's not that far, cruising over one side of, we're sort of across but not through, so it's a little bit easier geography speaking. Yeah. So you can, blast the stereo and cruise on over to Glen Iris. So obviously we had you in when Resistance dropped.
Yep.
And we had a bit of a chit chat about that. And you know what? We're not gonna bury the lead here. We're gonna deep dive right on this. So I'm gonna ask the question: how are you feeling about Star Wars right now, Cathrine?
Oh my god, it's so good! Oh my god!
Now,
yes.
the reason that Catherine's so excited is because there's a new TV show that's been announced by Disney. What's it all about, Cathrine?
Cassian Andor. Oh my god.
As I like to call it, Rogue 2, Havana Nights.
Look, I'll be looking into watching Dirty Dancing to Havana Nights.
Now, is Havana Nights a prequel or a sequel?
I don't think there's any of the same characters.
I know, but is it actually like in time? Is it set? Because Dirty Dancing is like set in the 50s, isn't it?
Yeah, it'll be similar. It'll be similar because they're American people in Cuba. So you'd think they wouldn't be there after, 1962?
Oh, wow.
63?
Here's the Educator coming out now.
When was the Cuban Missile Crisis?
I'd have to watch X-Men First Class to know that. That's how I get all my history. I'm just trying to Google it right here while we're doing it. One thing that Steele Saunders taught me about, he says, if you ever have a question and a thing, you don't let it hang. You Google it while you're talking.
But all I know is that if I look up GIFs with Dirty Dancing, Havana Nights, there's...
1958 it is set.
Yeah.
Now, we're just going to check Dirty Dancing.
Well, there's GIFs of Diego Luna just in a white singlet. So Cathrine may have to be sourcing a copy of this and watching it. Because, yes, I am rather in love with Diego Luna, or in other words, Cassian Andor. I think he's a fantastic character. And, yes, rather
1963, okay.
Oh, it's a prequel.
So it's a prequel. So my thing of saying Rogue 2 Havana Nights, the name that they're going to call the Cassian Andor series, makes sense because he was in a prequel. Dirty Dancing 2 was a prequel.
Yep.
Even though, whatever.
Yep.
Not the same character, not the same direct thing, but set before. Yep. So there's a precedence for Diego Luna to tell a previous story of a well-loved film.
Yeah. But I reckon it looks brilliant. And I've been banging on for a long time how much I love the characters from Rogue One and how interested I am in the development of the rebellion and those characters, and I want to find out more about them. So I'm just thrilled.
So I was on the train just doing my Twitter thing on the train as I do, and I saw the news pop up into my Twitter feed, and I tagged you in it about 4 minutes out. Now, was that the first time you saw? Had you seen the news already before I tweeted you, or you saw your name get tagged and you're like, ooh?
You are the news breaker.
Ah.
I was driving to work. I was actually late that day. Got into work, and fortunately I didn't have to do much that first period. But I was... At
least you weren't checking. I was driving to work. I was on my phone, and I was, as you do, and I was speeding down the freeway, and I had my Twitter feed going through.
I got out of the car, looked at my phone, and went, oh, you got mentioned in a comment. Wonder what that's all about. La 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 la. Going, setting up my computer while the computer's booting.
This hot news is just burning into your phone.
Go, oh yeah, that's taking ages. I'll just, put this song. Oh yeah, hello, la la. Oh my God. And I just froze. I just remember just freezing, and I couldn't quite comprehend. I was sort of staring, going, oh my God, this is happening. And then I was seeing the rest of Twitter, and my brain was exploding, but no one around me is reacting. I was sort of looking
Like,
around.
why are people talking about this?
Come on, come on.
This should be like when a world of, when there's an earthquake and everybody's, looking at their screens or something and
Yeah,
nothing.
so then I was like going through the feed and also, marking work and going through my feed, marking work, going through my feed. I hope my students don't listen to this.
They probably don't. We don't
No.
have that many listeners, but we could
No.
get, if you want to tell them, that'd be really good. We could get a nice little bump.
No. Then somewhat annoyingly, I had to go into a meeting. And while all of this was happening on Twitter,
You're like, well, first order of business today, everybody. I'd like to just take the floor. Before, good morning,
Yeah.
everybody else. So is everybody aware of Dirty Dancing 2 Havana Nights? Because something amazing has happened.
and then sort of I took a while longer. And after that meeting, I was still going through. My brain was just exploding. And I had a class in a little while. I was like, no, I have to let this out. Otherwise, I'm going to go nuts in this class. So I had to tell the people in my office. They didn't care. Meanwhile, I was jumping up and down and bouncing and like
Wrong crowd, wasn't
very,
it,
very
really?
happy. Yeah, wrong crowd. And, I had to explain who he was, but there was a couple of Star Wars people who was like, oh, okay.
Well, that'll be
why,
cool, I
why
guess.
are they doing that? I got asked, oh, that's not a good idea, is it? Because there's no Jedi. There's no Force. It's not going to go very well.
And you were like, I will cut you.
This is the Star Wars people I have in my office, so...
Well, it takes all types.
Yeah. But I had my Twitter joy, so that was good.
Well, there was certainly the Twitter reaction was probably more your speed of what you were trying to get to,
Yeah.
and I'd sort of I got off the train, went to work, tagged you in it, and then I sort of got back to my computer at work and managed to sort of check the timelines, and it was all sort of going off, and I was like, Cathrine must be very happy right now.
Yeah. So it was something I think we talked about during the Rogue One commentary about how interested I was in what he had done.
Yeah, well, it was just so out of the blue.
Yeah.
It was. I purposely not listened to any other podcasts that have covered it yet.
No.
So some of our friends' podcasts, the Canto Bites, and I think maybe the Bad Motivators, and I think Steele's Hyper Chat, they've covered some of it, but I haven't listened just because I was like, well, I don't want to just regurgitate what they've said, because we'll obviously be a little bit behind on the news and things. But as far as I know, and at least going off the social stuff, it didn't seem like this was like, oh yeah, we all knew this was coming. I mean, maybe a Jason Ward might be able to shed some light, but even he's never said, oh yeah, there's going to be another thing. I can't say anything. It was really, I just didn't even think that they would do 2 Star Wars shows at once.
No, I thought they'd just do the one, like have one live action, one animated type of thing going on. But no, this is brilliant. But yeah, I don't think anyone had even discussed or mooted this sort of idea.
Yeah.
Like The Mandalorian, you sort of think, oh yeah, they've talked Boba Fett, and it kind of makes sense, like a bounty hunters kind of thing.
Yeah, and then the time period going, just post Return of the Jedi, people were really interested in that. Jon Favreau's attached to it and things. But yeah, this was just sort of, you kind of go, oh wow, that's a great idea, but it wasn't anything that I'd realistically thought of, because when we did the Rogue One, we went, well, it's a shame we won't see these guys again, because they're sort of, they'll get cooked at the end.
Yes, very sadly.
But that doesn't matter, because it's we get a little bit more backstory and stuff. So, do you know anything about the format, like what it's going to be? Do we know anything like that kind of stuff? Is it? I know Mandalorian's 10-part series. Is it?
Yeah, I haven't heard anything. Again, I did listen to Steele's Hyper Chat, but there wasn't that much in terms of news.
It was just sort of, oh, here it is.
Here it is. I would suspect it'd be a similar type format to The Mandalorian. And because that's also like your HBO type of format, which seems to be successful, like your 10-part season.
Yep.
And just throw a lot of money at it. But, yeah.
I mean, I always sort of, we've talked about it a couple of times. I think when Andy was on here a few weeks ago, your co-host, that Geek Pod, give him a listen. They'll be back soon.
I promise.
Well, we were talking, Obi-Wan Kenobi. I was kind of going, Obi-Wan Kenobi miniseries is a perfect fit,
Yeah.
And Ewan McGregor's done TV, so it's not like he feels like he's beneath TV or above, TV's beneath him. But, this kind of makes perfect sense. It's a reasonably well-known actor, but he's not so massive that you wouldn't be able to get him. He's a solidly working actor.
Well, he's the leading the latest season of Narcos on Netflix, isn't he?
I never made it past the first series of that. Not because we didn't like it. It was just sort of, other things come on. But
well, I haven't watched the first 2 seasons, but yes, I am considering watching season 3 of Narcos.
He might have a white singlet on. We'll just give Catherine a second there. She's just relaxing, staring off in the middle distance here in the podcasting studio. Yep. But no, he's a name, but he's not a humongous name, but he's recognisable. Everybody would go, oh, yep, he's certainly got enough star power. The character is a popular enough character. I think, Jyn Erso, I think Felicity Jones is probably a little bit more popular, probably harder to lock down. I think that, and also I think there's books about Jyn Erso, what she gets up to anyway, isn't there? So
I'm sure that there
I think Cassian's past is still pretty shady, which is good because it does leave it, whether they've been bubbling on this for a long time and thinking about it, going, we don't want to give too much about what he kind of says, he alludes to things in the film about what the kind of life he's had, but
spies, assassins,
saboteurs. That's always the best one. It's like, is there anything better than being a saboteur?
Yeah. But how he shoots the guy in the back in his first scene.
Yep.
And you just want to go, ooh.
Not afraid to get his hands dirty.
Yeah. It's so different from, all other people in Star Wars. And that's what I love about Rogue One in a lot of ways, is that not a lot of people came into Star Wars, when Disney bought it to go, I want to know the backstory of how they stole the plans to the Death Star. But yet, I think it's actually taken the most amount of risks, and it's the most original of the sort of proposed anthologies. Mm-hmm. And I love it. I love Rogue One. I think it's brilliant.
It's really good because I just sort of was like, oh well, I guess they're done. That little chunk of the period's done, and I guess because where it takes place, canon wise, there's so much stuff around that time around the Star Wars. They already have so many stories around there, and I was like, oh well, I guess there isn't really much wiggle room that you could really do anything. Like Rebels butts up right against it and stuff as well, and I always kind of we talked about it in the commentary. I was just like, geez, they totally missed a trick not putting Cassian Andor in Rebels, and touching base with them. But now you're going, well, it might even go the other way now, where you might get a live action, Syndulla or any of those kind of characters.
Yeah. And there's also prospect, if you think about it, of more Space Jimmy Smix, Bail Organa, Mon Mothma, all the
And those actors, the actors that are in there, like Jimmy Smits is a name, but he's not we're not trying to get like Tom Cruise in there or something like that. You're getting people who want to work on good things and working on a Disney, it's like Netflix, big names do Netflix. And I think that the stigma of going, I'm doing a TV show. I don't think there's anybody who's in that cast that would be like, no. I mean, maybe, oh God, I've forgotten his name. Paul Gullet. No, not Paul Gullet. I was going to say...
Forrest
Whitaker. That would be a perfect chance to bring him in.
Yeah.
But, I think he had to reshoot a lot of stuff in his. But I guess you go, well, he might be too close to Jyn Erso. You don't want them crossing paths. But there's a whole period of time where Jyn Erso, I think like 15, that she goes off anyway. Yeah. So you could bring Forrest Whitaker into it, and he's a little bit more with it, and he's not so sort of lost his mind. And
definitely.
And
but Saul Guerrero,
Saul Guerrero, that would be really interesting. And then you could, there's the tie-ins of, do you bring in like an Enfys Nest type, with the seeds of the rebellion if you're going back that far and things. So, you could almost get unofficial sort of solo threads that come in because they kind of end up butting. I mean, depending on how far back you go.
Remember, he's been fighting this war since he was 6.
Yeah, that's right. So, you might get a little bit of him, getting sort of booted out. I'll have to check the timelines of whether he crosses over with the Clone Wars and things, or the end of the Clone Wars.
Yeah.
But, it's sort of ripe for... I mean, I would love to see the end of the Clone Wars with Cassian, and then you get clone troopers and things in, like, proper gear, like guys in suits and stuff,
Yeah.
not that kind of weird CG. I know that's one of Steele's gripes and things, but, you could get Clone Wars era stuff actually filmed in that gritty Rogue One style rather than that CG style. That'd be really, really awesome. You could see some of those designs and stuff.
Yeah.
But, I mean, a lot of people sort of said KTSO, but I guess it's the budget, putting a fully digital character in. And there already is a comic about how they meet. There is a Cassian Andor and K2SO comic.
But comics are made to be written over.
Well, this is the thing. I've got this whole story group and this canon thing now. So you assume they're negotiating these troughs of story and stuff, and you just kind of pick and choose the thing. I mean, I would like to, start earlier, and then, they'll do the trick where you probably get a clean-shaven Diego Luna to make him look younger and things. Catherine's again staring off into the middle distance. But, that's usually the trick. He doesn't get the facial hair until he gets a little bit more grizzled. So you want to make him all sort of fresh-faced and
But if we get those pilots in Blue Squadron, they've got to have moustaches. And because they were fabulous, and of course the other commandos. I would love to see them again. Some of them.
Well, it depends on how close they go, isn't it? Because if they go earlier, because it's sort of implied in Rebels, or in the story in Rebels, is that the idea of the Rebel Alliance is that there are all these cells of rebellions, and the idea of that it's an alliance is that they finally all go like, all right, we've got to basically band together with a central operations here, and that kind of happens towards the end of Rebels, which is still a little, quite close to Rogue One. So it's possible and probable, likely at least early on in the series, that he'll be Cassian Andor, Rebel cell dude, a bit more on the fringes of things rather than hanging out at Yavin 4. Like, I hope they've kept the Yavin 4 base, which would just be amazing. Like, it would be madness if they throw those sets out. Yeah. You would think that they're just all in storage somewhere going, hey, we might need to bust out the old Yavin 4 set every now and then. And it's a lot cheaper. I mean, that's the thing. They might go, hey, we've got all this Rogue One shit that we built that is just, gathering dust now. Yeah. We can actually put a lot of it back up, and there's your Rebel base. You don't have to pay for that. There's a couple of hangars. There's a couple of, sets and things.
Yeah, because they've made all these things relatively recently in the last couple of years. So, pull them out of storage. Yeah,
especially if they know they're going to keep making stuff forever.
Yeah. Disney's smart. They know what they're doing.
Yeah, well, it was crazy that, in the last couple of months, it's been like Mandalorian, like Resistance has come out and people are enjoying it. It is what it is. It's a solid kid show, which is exactly what we thought it would be. And people are kind of like, yep, cool, happy with that. And then like Mandalorian's come out, and now this Cassian Andor show, and then we've got episode 9. It's just absolutely flush with content. There was, after sort of Solo, struggled, all these people sort of calling it the death of Star Wars and burying it and saying that they're done. It's just, well, no, man, they had a plan all along. All right, obviously that didn't go the way that they were hoping, but pick yourself back up again and give the people what they want. And when I say the people what they want, give Catherine what she wants.
Give Catherine what she wants. I think Catherine knows what's best. Cassian Andor, Obi-Wan, gimme. So
what specifically in the story of Rogue 2 Havana Nights do you want to see? Like, do you want to see like his family? Do you want to see him just going on missions? Do you want to see love interests? Do you want to see...
No. Unless they're short brunettes.
Well, there you go. You heard it here first. Someone get KK on the phone. Catherine's throwing her hat in the ring.
So, I guess going on missions, seeing the, getting tech or getting intel, what has he had to do? Because obviously this is not the first time he's had to shoot someone in the back. is it possible that he's had, previous encounters with that guy, whose name I can't remember?
I don't
The
know.
guy
Worried
whose
dude
arm
in
a sling.
in alleyway who gets shot. So do you want to see like episode 1? Do you want to see fully formed Rebels agent Cassian Andor, or do you want to see, firehead young Cassian with a point to prove who wants to get revenge, or would you rather him? I feel like it's
What
sort of
will give me more? Like that, like seeing him a bit younger could possibly get me more, seasons.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I guess if you start him and he's just, it's a week before Rogue One, you've only got that sort of far to go.
Not that close.
If you kind of come in a bit earlier, you might get it. I don't think, even if I think they did go, we're going to show 10-year-old Cassian Andor, that would probably be the 20 minutes of the first episode, and then you'd move on.
Yeah. Or even if they had flashbacks.
Yeah, like Jyn Erso does in Rogue One.
Yeah. I wouldn't mind also seeing, just because, the actors there, like more of Bail Organa and Mon Mothma.
Mm-hmm.
Like they've been re-established now in Disney, from the prequels to now. I'd like to see more of them because they are good actors and would be great to use them while they are still
age appropriate,
here.
and then and I mean, we may not see another film, where they hit that time period where it's actually right to go. Like it's sort of going, well, Mon Mothma, I mean, you could put her in The Mandalorian, but I don't think they're dealing with the rebellion post Return of the Jedi. I don't know anything about it, but it seems like it's more like an outskirtsy thing. So, and then you're also crossing over the lines of another actor who played Mon Mothma at that age. They're probably not going to go back to the prequel Mon Mothma. So it's sort of like, well, this is your little nugget of time where she could probably fit in there. It's probably the same for I was gonna say Space Jimmy Smith, for Bail Organa as well, which would be really interesting. But I mean, what are your no-goes? No Leia, keep Leia out.
Yeah.
You can have her spoken about, but
spoken about, but maybe kept at arm's length.
You don't want to see a girl from Stranger Things playing Princess Leia. I mean, that's always seems to be the go-to fan casting, but
if they're going to have a flashback of Bail Organa on Alderaan somehow setting up or being part of the formation, you see a little Leia.
Yeah, if it's
somewhere.
if it's sort of like a 5-year-old Leia or something running around, it's probably the easier. Like I think the Stranger Things girl is probably 17 or 18 now anyway. Or maybe I'm wrong, I don't know. But, she's probably not that far. I mean, Carrie Fisher was sort of 19 when she played Leia. So you don't want to... I mean, even with the young Han, it was like, I don't want them overlapping. I don't want to see Olin Ehrenreich doing Empire Strikes Back era Harrison Ford stuff. Like, he did a good job, and he can do everything up to that point. But as soon as I see Han, that's Han until... He's gone in Force Awakens now. Like that's sort of established the Hanness now. So I think the crossover might get a little bit too close to the bone.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. I think we want to keep our eras fairly clean for that distinction.
Who else?
Tarkin. Or, of course, Mendo.
Yeah, wow, Mendo. I mean, it's Mendo does TV.
Yeah.
He does he does a bit of everything. I think he might relish popping back in. It would be kind of, I mean, that's the thing. Like, it could actually make the, it's always that sort of like if they do it right thing. But, it could actually enhance Rogue One and make the relationships a lot, more interesting. And, I think they did a good enough job to establish motivations for characters and stuff. But then all of a sudden, if you've got this whole, interplay between Cassian and Mendo, I keep saying Mendo, but I don't know. I mean, I guess you've got to tread lightly because I guess the Death Star was his thing, and they know nothing about the Death Star. So when would they actually cross? But it's possible.
They may not cross, but we may just see, say, on the scientific base, Krennic and Galen Erso
Oh, by all means, name
Yeah.
drop them. Like,
Yeah.
stick a couple of holograms in there, or do do something. And
Even if we get to see the relationship between Gale and Urso and Bodhi, the pilot.
yeah, that's true.
So not necessarily having them meet up with Cassian, but we have all these strands of stories.
Yeah, well, it'd be funny whether they do that, whether they do a rogue where it actually almost works like a rogue. It's not actually just a Cassian Andor story. It is sort of like a Rogue One thing, or whether it is just like, no, this is just the young Cassian Andor adventures, and the events of Rogue One. Just he doesn't really cross paths with any of them. But like if he's sort of working to the rebellion, I think the Mon Mothma, Jimmy Smith's connects are a little bit more logical. Or the dude, there was another dude who was sort of giving out orders and things. There was who actually, I read a Star Wars comic the other day, and he dies in that one. They actually kill him off, like he's in some space battle, and I was like, oh, they killed him off in the comic, which is quite interesting.
So I think if I was to lay money, Mon Mothma, Bail Organa, some people from Blue Squadron and the Commandos, I'd feel fairly comfortable putting $1.
Who was the a dollar? You can put $1. What's his
Big
name?
spender.
We talked about the Scottish Melchi, whatever it is, the Scottish dude who was the sort of the head of
Yeah, he was awesome.
He's gettable.
Yeah. Yeah.
You could easily tap him, I reckon. I mean, you're not going to see Baze and Chirrut, obviously, because they don't sort of come into the story. Then I don't think we'll see Jyn Erso coming in. She doesn't come in the story yet. But Saw Gerrera isn't out of the realms of possibility.
Yeah.
Especially since he's sort of more involved with the rebellion and ends up sort of splintering off, becomes a bit of an extremist and stuff. And the Rebels, I don't know, people are a bit jarring, a bit weird seeing live action Rebels people.
That could be very jarring.
I mean, they had live action Chopper, I guess, but even that was a little bit weird.
It was in the background. It was just a little blinking.
Like a little rollover.
Yeah. Yeah, which I think is probably the most you want because, again, going from animation to real life, it's just a bit strange.
Yeah, it might be a little bit weird. It might be a bit of a tough sell, but you never know. Like, I'm not going to pass judgment until I see it. So, I mean, there was no time. Was there any timeline about this? Is this sort of like, hey, it's coming, get your wallets ready?
It's coming. I think because it was just done as a Bobby Iger, to the shareholders. Oh yeah, we're making this. So be prepared to make some more money from our Disney Plus streaming service.
Yeah. Well, I mean, two 10-part series is 20 weeks. So that's, you're getting close to half a year's worth of content, of weekly content then, straight off the bat.
Yeah.
I know that they're doing a Loki show as well. They've already said that they're doing. So they're getting Tom Hiddleston out, which, he's a bigger star than, than Diego Luna is. Sorry, Diego, but that's the way it goes. I don't think there's any question that they can't sort of pull the star power and stuff. So, if they go, all right, well, we've got, 20 weeks of Star Wars weekly TV shows. You've got another 10 weeks of a new... because I don't think they'll do binge drops. I think they'll drip feed. I think with something like Star Wars.
Yeah.
Both have their advantages and stuff. But I mean, like I haven't even finished Daredevil yet, season 3. It's just sometimes they drop and I hit it, and like especially now I won't have no time. But
this thing I haven't watched season 2 of Stranger Things, and I really liked season 1, but it's just so confronting. You just see 10 episodes, you're like, oh, I can't catch up because I don't have time to binge watch anything. The most I get to watch is an hour at a time before I have to go and do something.
Just keep running that DVD of Havana Nights over and over again. It's just permanently glued in the DVD player.
Oh, you joke, but it's going to be hard to find a copy.
No, there must be a copy. I will make it my mission, and I will find you a copy. So when I see you next, I will get you a copy one way or another.
Well, the other night I went looking for copies of, long story, but Anne of Green Gables and Anne of Green Gables, the sequel.
Anne of Green Gables harder. Gables harder. Green.
And it was difficult.
Was that the 80s one?
Yeah, the 1985 ones with Megan Fellows and Colin.
Is that the thing with bosom buddies?
Yes.
Yeah, that's the only thing I remember from that because we just somebody would watch it and they would just talk about.
Boy.
I know they would just be
You're
sniggering
such a boy.
about bosom buddies. That's the only thing I remember. I never sat through an episode of it, but I just remember somebody sniggering about that in primary school. So it was probably when it came out. Actually, 85. That sounds about right.
Yeah, we recorded it on Betamax, so I watched it over and over again.
All right. Well, there's a couple of little missions there. Havana Nights might be a little bit easier, but I'll get the content team onto it and see what we can come up with. So that was obviously the big Star Wars news that sort of dropped. I don't really think. I mean, all the other sort of stuff is sort of hearsay, and there's a lot of set pics of Mandalorian stuff. There was a really funny one that Jason Ward from Making Star Wars put today on his Facebook profile where he was doing a selfie and he had the Mandalorian set behind him, and in the bottom right corner were a bunch of stormtroopers, which was so somebody dropped the ball on that.
Yeah.
Where he was just sort of standing on this hill looking down on where the set is. But I mean, I think he's been doing that for a while. But then having obviously stormtroopers confirmed, which I guess is probably a given. The fact that it sort of takes place straight after Jedi, and there's probably a few sort of stormtroopers trying to figure out what's going on in the world.
Yeah. And it's sort of implied in the Aftermath books, definitely, that the Empire still goes on for a few years. And you've got to think, you can't just take one event to end the Empire.
Yeah, like if you blow up Parliament House, you're not going to, the government isn't going to just stop functioning all of a sudden. Like there's things that have to be done. There's protocols and all those sort of things. So I hope that, I suppose it'll be, like you said, it's this sort of lone gunman thing in his story, but I think the sort of wider events of what's going on in the universe will sort of drift in and out and stuff.
Yeah.
Like you probably have Imperials like, well, we're in this army and now we don't have to answer anybody, so we're going rogue and we're going to do whatever we like and, see if we can push some people around without impunity. And, I'm I'm definitely more excited for Cassian.
Yeah.
But I guess because there's more... I guess it's more clarity about what it will be.
Yeah.
I guess because you already know more about them. We don't even know who's in the Mandalorian. They haven't even announced any of the cast members.
They've released officially, one picture and a couple of things on their
they've
Instagram.
done the directors and stuff, which is cool, and it's a really good list of directors and stuff, but it's
The directors do sound fantastic.
Yeah.
Mandalorian. And so I've got my hopes up for a great list for Cassian Andor as well.
Well, I hope they do a similar thing and they kind of, throw it out to a bunch of different people. And they haven't sort of said anything about who's going to write it. And is it sort of the people, is Gareth Edwards involved, who did Rogue One? Like he might not want to come back to Star Wars after they kind of quietly.
He made a little cameo there in The
Last
Last Jedi.
Yeah. This might be quite a good olive branch and say, hey, actually, we can be a little bit more hardcore. You want to do some more, because I think the sort of the story with Rogue One, I think which you touched on in the commentary was, he did a little bit hard edge. It was a little bit more violent, a little bit more of a war film, and they had to sort of soften the edges a little bit.
And obviously it's all reading between the lines, but it wasn't like they had a problem with him or his style. It was just a bit of, okay, we need to edit this slightly differently, and we might need to cut.
Yeah, I don't think they were it was a situation where he was sort of clashing with the actors or clashing with the producers, but I think they kind of went, I think they've done a couple of times now and they've kind of gotten burnt, probably aside from JJ and Rian Johnson, at least on the spin-offs, is you kind of give these guys a bit of freedom.
Yeah.
And you ask them, you hire, but the thing is, you look at Gareth Edwards' movies, you've got Godzilla and you've got monsters and, he does do that very atmospheric, sort of hard-edged stuff. And then same with Solo, you get if you hire the 21 Jump Street guys and then you complain that they're doing wacky improv, it's like, well, why did you hire the 21 Jump Street guys? You should have hired good old reliable Ron Howard from the start if you wanted a nice, reliable, safe but enjoyable Star Wars movie. So I think it would be really good. I'd be really chuffed if Gareth Edwards came back.
Because I think he did bring something to it, because you see footage of him, with the handheld camera, and the whole set being live as well.
Yeah, like a 360 sort of set. Yep.
Yeah, so anything could be captured, and I think he really brought an immediacy to Rogue One that perhaps other directors haven't brought. That he was sort of in the action and you felt it a bit more.
I reckon, you'd be miffed not to at least be asked. Like you wouldn't want to be opening your phone up. You know, if he's driving to work like you were, he gets an alert on his phone and it's just like, oh, hey, Gareth Edwards, he's been tagged in a thing. He's like, oh, well, I'll just get in and I'll read it in a minute. And then he pulls his phone open and they're going, oh, they're doing a Cassian Andor TV show. And he's like, oh, well, first I heard about it. Like, it'd been nice to, you know, I would have at least been asked and I could have said no, or, hey, I'll give you some notes that, you know, or some ideas. But
again, I think reading between the lines, I think the relationship is pretty good.
I mean, he fronted up to all the premieres and did the press. And I think, you know, I don't know Diego Luna, but he's a director as well and he's done stuff. I think he would have at least been like, hey, is Gareth Edwards going to be involved in this, or we should ask? You know, if before I agree to sign on to this thing, you know, I'd like to see him involved if he'd like to be involved in some respect. And
I can't think of his name, but I just saw Harry Potter and Prisoner of Azkaban on the weekend, and that was directed by
Alfonso Cuarón.
Yes, and I think he's done movies with Diego Luna, so he could be.
He's Academy Award-winning director, though. Yeah. He's big. I just learned to do a Star Wars movie. Give Alfonso Cuarón a movie, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah.
He can direct like a Havana night. I'm just going to grind this into the ground as much as I can.
Oh, we need to do a Havana Nights commentary.
That'll be the shoddiest, like the shoddiest relation, the shoddiest. Well, we could always report back. I had my friend Kate on a few weeks ago where she hadn't seen any Star Wars and she watched Force Awakens, and then she came back and did the review. So we could do the Havana Nights review maybe when it drops. I mean, we'll definitely have to do something when it comes out.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to tell you how to do your podcast, but you could do the That Geek Pod weekly Cassian update. You know, anyway, you know, you could.
The Cathrine just drools and talks about him. No.
Well, this is the thing. It's the expectation level now, isn't it? I mean, talk about next year. We're having 2 Star Wars live action TV shows and then Episode 9 coming out. Like I said, it's 20 weeks of Star Wars TV shows.
Is it coming out next year though? Or
well, I don't know. This is the thing. Like, who knows? Yeah. Who knows? We really don't know. So. When we'll be at Celebration in April, and I would definitely
we're going to the panel.
Well, that's the thing. There'll be a Cassian panel. There'll be the panel. We better queue up now. Catherine's ready to fly to Chicago right now to sit out the front of the convention center for 8 months. Actually, it's not even that far away. What is it? April. So it's 6 months.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Oh, all right. Well, maybe we do need to. Yeah. So I mean, you know, I don't know about the Cassian one, but the Mandalorian. Depending on when they get done, they could be going, hey, you know, we're doing this Mandalorian thing and it's coming out tomorrow. You know, they could do something like that where the first episode drops during Celebration, or we get to see that, or there'll be, excuse me, at least there'll be a trailer or something, you know.
Yeah, you'd think at least for Mandalorian there'd be a trailer.
Though, Episode 9 you feel like Episode 9 is the big dog, and they'll drop the Episode 9 trailer. So you don't want to drop a Mandalorian trailer that everybody goes crazy for, and then drop an Episode 9 trailer. Then they'll go, oh well, you know, wasn't as good as Mandalorian.
Would they do Episode 9 then do Mandalorian?
Well, I don't know. Maybe I don't. This is why I'm not in charge yet, and this is the question. So you never know. We might get a Mandalorian trailer earlier, and then they do a panel and they tease footage or something. You know what I mean? Like they kind of go, we wet your beak a little bit before there, and we'll show you a little bit at Celebration. So the big reveal is Episode 9.
Because when's the Super Bowl? Because that's usually when they've dropped a movie trailer.
February, I think. I need our American friends. We need the Bad Motivator boys. They know their football and things. I think it's Feb. I think it's early Feb. I'm just trying to remember when we watched the Solo one. Was that the Super Bowl trailer we watched, or was that the second trailer? I think it must have been the second trailer. I can't remember. Yeah. Goodness, time flies. Time flies. Yeah. That's the thing. Like we've had a Star Wars movie this year, and we've had a new TV show as well. So you kind of go, oh, we've got all this stuff coming out next year. It's like, well, it's actually only one more thing that we know about.
Yeah, but it's so exciting. You know what's ahead, and the only thing that worries me with quotation marks is how we access the Disney Plus streaming service here in Australia.
Yeah, I mean that's the big question, isn't it? We just don't know whether they'll. I mean, who knows if they do it? If it's a browser thing, I mean, they can obviously do it in a browser pretty easily, but you want your smart telly to do it and your Xbox and everything. And let's be honest, we're a nation of pirates, and if they don't drop it, there'll be ways to get it. It's just up to whether. I mean, I don't think there'll be any issue with us watching it. But if they want us to pay for it, they've got to be ready because we've been given the short shrift of release stuff forever.
Yeah. We've been lucky with some things. So, like with Star Trek Discovery, that was on in America on CBS All Access, but here in Australia we get it on Netflix. So
they farmed it out to Netflix because they didn't have the thing here.
Internationally it's on Netflix, but it's going to be interesting because a version of CBS All Access is going to come to Australia later.
Because they bought Channel 10, didn't they?
Yeah, they own Channel 10. The Survivor fan in me is very, very happy because it means I have access to past Survivor seasons.
Even the ones that you know what happens.
Yes, but rewatches are fun because then you can really watch the winner's journey and see. Honestly,
it's no less ridiculous than anything else.
I rewatched Samoa a while ago, and the winner there is actually quite hidden, but it's interesting to watch it to see the little clues that they dropped of this other person losing and this other person.
So with Survivor, not to get too much into the Survivor chat, because I've never watched a season of Survivor, but do they film the whole thing in one big go and then edit it and release it, or do they kind of do a week by week?
No, so it's all filmed in various locations. These days they just do it all in Fiji. So 39 days of filming, and then they edit 3 days worth of content to 42 minutes.
Right. So it's all in the can before it's aired.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's not like they're going, we've got to get another week out and then another week out and then another week out. So it's all basically, we know who wins by the time we start editing.
Yeah. So the actual winner gets read on a live finale. Apparently the executive producers know. Perhaps one editor knows. But there's usually, I think I've heard that there's 2 editors who work on a season, and they might go in like one does the other, like next episode, and they actually will work backwards, like from the end back to the start, and follow story threads back that way.
Sounds very complicated. Sounds very complicated.
Yeah.
I mean, hopefully Cassian Andor spin-off isn't that complicated because I won't be able to follow it, but. Well, it definitely is an exciting time, and I hadn't even thought about Celebration, and that is actually, so chances of Diego Luna at Celebration now have just skyrocketed. Catherine's going to be like she's at Beatlemania at the front there, trying to keep it together. So we've sort of talked about going, will we do the overnight queues? Will we do the, I'm like, I don't know, episode. We'll be there. Well, I mean, you might not have. Depend. It's a pretty massive room apparently, so Episode 9 will be tricky. The Cassian one, you might get lucky, but I guess you have to feel the vibe. I've never been to a Celebration. We'll just have to get the vibe of how it's all sort of running when we get there, and get the feels of get the lowdown. Plan our attack. Luckily, we get there a day or two before. We can. Well, I think we get there on the Tuesday. Yeah. And then it doesn't start till I think Wednesday is some sort of preview thing, and then
Thursday's like the collector day or something.
Yeah. So it's actually, we're there for like 3 days before any of the major stuff happens. We'll probably be sick of it by then, but it's going to be a fun adventure nonetheless.
Yes.
So before we sign off, Catherine, any closing thoughts here? Anything you feel like we haven't quite touched upon?
I've just had a thought that the K2SO cameo could be likely because you look at shows like your Star Trek Discovery. They have a character in there who has a lot of CG happening on them.
Well, I guess they've got the models already. Yeah. And they've already made a K2SO for for Rogue One. So I'm assuming they've done all the research and stuff. Yeah. So maybe there is a way that, if you can get him in there and he looks 85 to 90% as good as he did in Rogue One, then great. If you can get Alan Tudyk back, then, awesome. Even just to do the voice.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sure they can do it, and I'm sure there's other shows where there's quite a lot of CG happening, but sometimes we're not always aware of it.
Yeah, well, that's right. I mean, it's Star Wars. It's going to have CG in it anyway. It's, one way or another.
Game of Thrones has dragons every week.
Well, that's right. That's right. If we can get in a dragon, we can get a couple of K2SO. So is that your number one inclusion? If you could have anyone, K2SO, almost like a buddy cop.
Oh,
Or you kind of Mendo thinking,
Mendo would be sweet. K2SO, I can see it happening. I'd like to see more of that relationship. I'd like to see more of Mon Mothma and the whole how the rebellion works, because let's face it, we don't know.
No, it's always a lot of kind of people in a meeting room discussing the plan. It would be nice to see the sort of the tension behind the seeing the tension behind the scenes and things, like the little splinter groups and the people who don't agree with each other, and and he might be sort of like a guy who's sort of blindly loyal to Mon Mothma, and I was like, well, you got to go out and do this, and don't worry about those guys. And look, it's going to be exciting. We'll know more. I'll work on tracking down a copy of Havana Nights for you, Catherine. You can report back. You might have to tune into that Geek Pod to get the commentary track on that, but you never know. So people want to get in touch with you. I know you're on here all the time, so people must know your socials and stuff. But let's have it again, please.
Yes. So Cathrine_Kneen. That's on your Twitter. So basically, I tweet some Star Wars, bit of geek stuff, and yes, Survivor. It's a good show. It's a really good season, this current season.
Well, there you go. There's a sell for you. And your podcast with our buddy Andy will be coming back soon. Andy's back from his European jaunt, so it's just logistics now, isn't it? I've actually had you both on my podcast separately. And the thing was that when this, actually I didn't touch on this, is when this news dropped, I was kind of like going, they're definitely going to talk about it on their one. And I said a very subtle, if you guys don't want to talk about this, come on. I know Catherine wants to talk about it, so I don't want to undercut your podcast. I want to make sure you guys, if you get it out first. But
no, Andy's back from travels, but there's a lot of life stuff at the moment, so we'll see how that goes. Maybe over summer when that stuff can will calm down a bit. We'll probably get a few under our belts, but
stay tuned.
Yeah,
It'll be here. Until then, you can just hear them separately on here intermittently. I'll probably have Andy on in a couple of weeks, and then you, and then maybe I'll just sneakily double book you both, and you'll just set up what are you doing here? What are you doing here? Like, oh, surprise, we're doing a podcast. I've forced you together. Well, thanks for coming over, Catherine, and driving over onto this side of town. It's always a lot more fun to do it in the studio. Yep. But you can follow us at Star Wars Spelt and all that stuff. Leave us a review. If you are into Peppa Pig, I do a Peppa Pig podcast as well.
I love it. I love it.
Have you actually even watched an episode of Peppa Pig before?
Yes, I have nieces and nephews.
Yes, of course you do. Sorry. Which I do with our friend Matt Frost, who's been on here a couple of times as well. And you can just find, if you follow us on social media, you can follow all that kind of stuff there. And thanks again, Catherine.
Thanks, Josh.
And we'll see you soon. Bye.